You're listening to If Only I Were Wiser podcast, where Raina Wilson brings together wisdom and raw life stories to provide encouragement and truth. So many times it's easy to become discouraged in your own pursuit of health because your story or circumstances look drastically different from your favorite influencer or even the expectations you had for yourself. If that is you, welcome! This space is for you to learn, breathe, and maybe just listen and see what wellness could look like for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. On today's episode, I have fellow military mama and founder of Holy Hot Mess, Heather Yarrington. Heather is a 35-year-old Catholic Christian military wife and homeschooling mother of 4 kiddos. She is passionate about making faith relatable and accessible to busy women who are seeking holiness through life's messy moments, not despite them. In this episode, Heather shares what it's looked like for her to pursue holiness in the midst of crazy life and PCS moves with the military. And we all know that biblical femininity and submission is a really hot topic right now, so Heather shares her insight as well as what she's learning from the Lord and how it's changed her own parenting and marriage with her husband. This is definitely a topic you don't want to miss, so let's dive in. Hello, Heather. Welcome to the If Only I Were Wiser podcast. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Of course. Let's start off by what a day in the life looks like for you, which I giggle a little bit because you and I both know that life is just a little chaotic right now. But I would just love to hear the season you're in.
Um, so the season I'm in right now, is doesn't happen very often. Not too, I guess, more often than most people, but we are about 20 days out of starting our international move to Spain. So I'm a homeschool mom. Normally, I'd wake up and breakfast and then start school with the kids. Right now, it's a lot of like decluttering and purging and getting the cars fixed and fixing up the house and having contractors here and stuff. So
Yeah.
a day in the life is kind of crazy. but yeah, I mean, just right now it's just a little wild, but we're still trying to get math and language arts done, because we're not done with those curriculums for the year yet. We have like 15 more lessons left, so I'm still trying to truck along, but like some it's just not happening some days, and that's fine. I have to give myself grace. It's a wild season.
Yeah, for sure. So that's so crazy. 20 days. Goodness.
Yeah, so we are actually my husband doesn't have his final out, and for anybody who's like not military is you basically have to completely discharge from what you have to completely discharge from being under the authority of one base before you can go to another. But what people don't realize is that the movers can really only come at certain times. And so they kind of told us, hey, we can either come May 22nd or we can come June 15th. And we were like, well, our home is being rented June 1st. So you have to
Oh my
come May
gosh.
22nd. So, which is fine. Me and the kids are just going to hightail it out of here and kind of make a vacation out of it. See a bunch of stuff and visit old friends and eventually make our way to my parents' house and then to DC. We got like because I cram way too much stuff going on, but we have a tour of the White House and the Capitol building. And then we'll end up in southeastern Virginia where my in laws are. And that's where we're flying out of. So we don't actually leave the country until June 14th. But me and the kids are going to leave Louisiana May 22nd. My husband won't actually leave until May 31st. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Love that for you.
Yeah, we're excited. I grew up a military brat, and we never moved.
Oh,
So
wow.
from the time I was 3.5 until I got married, I lived in Virginia Beach, Virginia. So I kind of welcome the the move chaos. I'm also slightly familiar with the military lifestyle, at least. But we had been praying for a while for like adventure because my dad got to see
Mm.
the whole world, but we never did. So that was one thing that I was like, if it comes to it, I really want to see the world on the Air Force's dime, and we're gonna get
Hmm.
to. So
Yeah, how exciting. What is one thing you're really looking forward to in the midst of all the crazy going on?
I really a couple years ago really started to it sound I don't want to say enjoy, um, but surrendering to the suffering that comes with each season really, really brings me closer to Christ. So I, um, there's been a lot of surrender with this move already. I'm kind of looking forward to like how he's going to mold my heart, because I know that it's going to be very lonely. I know, those kind of things. So as much as there's going to be like cool adventure and travel and stuff, um just personally, like I know that a lot of growth for me at least comes in difficult seasons and stuff. So oddly enough, like I'm a little bit looking forward to that cross, just because sometimes when life is so good, we detach from God because life is good. So it's like, why do we need him when everything's going great, but when things start to feel chaotic, I don't know, that's just kind of, it's a weird thing that
Hmm.
I guess I'm drawn to a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I found myself in that same kind of just heart posture lately of like, Lord, like, if you are not in all of this day, I am not going to be a kind
Yeah.
mom. So please.
And just like the grace with just, I mean, whether it be with parenting or with marriage or with the military life, like being able to be like, I know that you're God and you're sovereign over my life. And even if this is hard, and even if it feels bad, and even if it doesn't feel good, I know that you ultimately have good in store for me, which is me ending up in heaven. And that doesn't mean that it's going to always feel good, or that sometimes it will ever feel good. But
Right.
I don't know, there's something in my growth and maturity that and I mean it's a little bit of my backstory, but I through some traumatic events when I was in college. I was at Virginia Tech during the shooting in 2007. Later that year, I was raped by
Mm.
a friend's friend, and I really stuffed all that stuff down for like 15 years. And it was last year during Lent, I was praying about what I should give up for Lent, and God told me to find a therapist.
Mm.
And so I found a therapist, I found a spiritual director, and I did all this trauma therapy. And it was amazing and it was great. But really, one of the biggest things that came out of it was like, you're a control freak, and you're a control freak because that's how you deal with trauma.
Wow.
And so peeling back those layers, it's like I now realize my hard days with parenting are when I'm trying to control the chaos, um instead of surrendering that and being like, okay, God,
Definitely.
these are your children, like help me parent your children well, help me parent them for heaven, instead of just trying to control them so that they behave so that it doesn't embarrass me or interrupt me or whatever the issue is. And then the same thing with marriage. It was like, am I trying to control my husband into being trustworthy and to being, whatever, all these things. And then I was realizing like, that's not the proper order of things. And with the military life, I think this season has really just opened up my eyes how many in the years past I have just always tried to control everything instead of just surrendering it and being like, okay, follow the steps that are given in front of us, but like really God's providence is there, and trust, and then just put one foot in front of the other instead of feeling like you're a failure if everything's not perfect. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
for sure. Thank you for sharing that. I would love to just hear more of like your story and your heart behind your platform, um and kind of where the Lord has like led you to share about some of these topics.
I was raised a cradle Catholic, but really I like to always specify very culturally Catholic, Irish Catholic. Didn't know or understand my faith or why we believed things, and it wasn't until when I was pregnant with my first that I really started to ask questions and then seek answers. And it's like every year, we go through this liturgical cycle where it's like Advent prepares you for Christmas, and then you have learning time, growing time, and then you have Lent, which prepares you for Easter. And I've, in years past, given up things for Lent, like soda or sugar, and those are wonderful things to give up. And if it's going to cause you to like, pause and pray, whatever. But like I said, last year, I really was just praying and deep in prayer, like, what am I supposed to give up? And God was calling me to like give up my trauma. Like you have to eventually deal with this and move on. because I was allowing my
Mhm.
hurt to hurt other people, lashing out at my kids. And not, I wasn't abusive or anything, but I would get frustrated and I would yell, and then I would feel so much shame. And it was just like this cycle of like, I am a good
Yeah.
person and I know I'm a good mother. So like, why are things like getting in the car and people not listening to me spiraling me? And so he really called me out of that, and it was a lot of hard work. So this year I was really trying to be super intentional about like, what are you asking me to give up, God? And I
Mm.
didn't even want to know why.
Right.
Just kind of in prayer, um, what are you calling for me to give up? And then eventually I know that he reveals himself. So I had this pull on my heart to give up leggings. And it sounds so silly. I'm in a Bible study group on Wednesday nights, and I actually like we were all sharing, and someone gave up fast food and someone gave up soda and somebody else gave up spending except for on two certain days of the week or something like that, just to be more
Mm.
intentional about their spending. And I said leggings, and the room like busted out with laughter, and I was so offended and I was so hurt. And I listened to a podcast like the next day about how easily offended just our culture is. And I kind of stepped back and I was like, okay, I don't need to be offended because everybody's coming from different walks of life, and I'm the only stay-at-home mom
Sure.
in a room of women who get up, put on a uniform or put on their dress for the day and go do their job. And so I was like, so a lot of them can't understand where I'm coming from, that for me, I have the ability to wake up, be productive or not, and one of the things that I realized when I gave up the leggings, and I didn't go to only dresses or skirts like some people do. I just made a little bit more of an effort into myself, and I was really surprised at how much it changed
Right.
my productivity and what I thought about myself, and even my relationship with my husband. And it really led to like some deepening conversations, because the no leggings meant I'm wearing pants and maybe like a nicer, not even a blouse, but just like a sweater, just something nicer. But then you look in the mirror and you're like, well, this looks weird because I have no makeup on. I
Mhm.
got like crusty skin and my hair's a mess. So then I would like try to do something with my hair, but then it still would be like, okay, maybe I should put a little bit of makeup on. And so I did. And then all of a sudden it's like, I have confidence and I don't feel like a bum. And then that translated into
Mm.
like, okay, now it's time to get to work, get stuff done for the day. And I was so much more productive. Like homeschool wasn't taking 4.5 hours anymore. It was taking two. And then like I was done with the things I had on my to-do list, and I was like picking up books to read them. And it sounded so silly, but I
Mhm.
realized I realized how much those leggings were a crutch for me. And when I say, I'm not talking about like leggings are not the devil. This is like the conversation. People think I'm attacking the leggings. It's not the leggings. It's whatever your crutch is, right? And my crutch was really I have this. They're so soft. I'm wearing some right now because everybody in my house has been sick and I've been home decluttering, but um they're like buttery soft and they're from Amazon, and it's like a 3 pack for $20. and and I would literally sleep in them, wake up, put on a different pair, and then put on a different shirt. No bra, like, so it was just like there was no distinction between like work day and like rest,
Mhm.
which I realized helped me to never truly rest and helped me to never truly work too. It was this very weird dynamic. And from all of that, I really started diving into biblical productivity and biblical womanhood, which it was not the first time I had heard Ephesians 5 talking about women submit to your husbands. It wasn't the first time I heard that, but honestly, my point of view was,
Mhm.
oh, well, I'll submit to him when he treats me how Christ loves the church. And then I was really realizing how much of our actions and our mentalities around things are they allowing our husbands to lead, to be the heads of the family. And my husband's an amazing person. He's my best friend. But I realized there were
Mm.
many ways that I just controlled things and didn't ask his input. And And it was funny because, you know, the Bible doesn't say much about physical appearance. It honestly says like beauty is fleeting, and that this biblical womanhood is a very internal thing. But
Yeah.
there are things like she rises before the sun, and she makes good food for her family. And the Proverbs 31 woman does work, which, you know, I kind of I have my little podcast on the side,
Mm.
but it's all within the context of that her priorities are being met first. And that was a big shift I had to make, is none of these side hustles can take the place um, of my duties. And if I'm failing in the things I know God has put in front of me, caring for my home, caring for my husband, caring for my children and homeschooling them, then the podcast or anything else, like, that's frills. And it cannot be something that tramples everything else. So yeah, so as I really dove into the biblical femininity, I even started watching videos on like how to be a more feminine woman, just because
Yeah.
I think I mean, we all grew up in this I can do anything, you can do better, I can do anything better than you, like, mentality, where like girls are equal to men. And I think we're all obviously equal in dignity, equal in worth, you know. um but I think we have very different roles to play, and the Bible tells us
Mm.
that. And so from there, it opened up so many conversations with me and my husband, where I actually sat down and asked him, like, "Hey, what are some things that I do that emasculate you?" You know, and he said, "You know, if I would have come
Mm.
into this conversation on my own, you would have gotten really mad and defensive." And I was like, "Probably, yeah." But because I had opened up that kind of can of worms, I mean,
Yeah.
he told me some things. We had even discussed that, you know, we're one flesh, and when I get stressed, I'll go chop off my hair or dye it a
Mhm.
crazy color. And that's just like my go. I joke now that I'm like, "Hey, if I do something crazy to my hair, please
Yeah.
check in on my mental health, because it's probably not okay." um and my husband was like, "You know, anytime you do that, you never ask me." And it's not that he'd tell me no,
Yeah.
but he loves my long hair. And it's not that he doesn't think I'm beautiful otherwise. Like, it's not that. And a lot of people want to twist it and turn it into that. That's not what it is. But there's also been conversations just about, between me and my friends too, just what, if my friends invite me out to dinner, I'm going to put on a cute top and some jeans and maybe some cute shoes. I'll put on makeup and I'll do my hair. But like, I don't even put on a bra for my own family. And I just was realizing, how much am I giving my best self to everybody but the people God has chosen for me to mission to? You know, like, your primary mission is in your home as a woman.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, no matter where you work, whether you're, you know, working for corporate America, whatever it is, your primary evangelical mission is the people in your home. And I just realized I wasn't giving them my best. So it's funny because I posted a video of me like making my bed, a reel, and just put like, I gave up leggings for Lent, and kind of told the story. And it
Yeah.
really made a bunch of people mad, but it also made a lot of people kind of just say like, "Oh
Mm.
man, maybe they are a crutch for like my laziness, or just no distinction between the work day and the rest day."
Yeah.
And so yeah, so that's kind of where I am. I'm honestly like diving into it still, like really letting scripture just seep into my soul and work on me. And I think that's the beauty of where scripture can be extremely personal. I think we have to be very careful that we're not just interpreting all scripture however we want to, and picking and choosing Bible verses. But I think when you do personally sit and meditate and say,
Mhm.
"Okay, God, I'm going to read Proverbs 31 every day for a month, and I'm going to let you work on softening my
Yeah.
heart," you know? And there's moments where I'm like, "Oh man, like, you really do want me to wake up a little bit before the kids, even if it's for 15 minutes, just to have a moment," you know? Or, "You know what, God, you're right. Like, I'm trying to do
Yeah.
this side hustle, but it's causing me to yell at my kids and tell them to go to the other room and be quiet," or whatever. It's like, where my priorities aren't right. It's
Mhm.
not that the side hustle's wrong, it's that the work priorities are wrong, you know? So um yeah, I'm just really kind of diving into that. That's where I am.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that. I think you and I had talked about it. Like, I earlier in the year had challenged myself to like a month of no leggings or like soft pants.
Yeah. Yeah, the
And
comfy.
so it was just like I was transitioning out of a season of like full-time, part-time working, but I also like hadn't had a break in having my son with me, so I was still working full-time or part-time with him.
Mhm.
And I had just
Yeah.
like postpartum wrecks you in a whole other way that
Mhm.
people don't prepare you for, which is why I'm passionate about physical and mental health postpartum. But
Yes.
I went through a whole month of like, I am going to get ready today and I'm going to post a picture. You're going to get so tired of my outfits because I'm not a fashionista.
Yeah.
But I had the accountability of that, of just, hey, this is my outfit. I put on jeans and that's a win for me.
Yeah.
Like I typically just like, I don't wear makeup. That comes from
Yeah.
the way that I was raised, and it wasn't, not that it wasn't encouraged, but I like wasn't allowed to wear makeup until I was like 16 because my dad said I didn't need it. I'm thankful for that now.
Yeah.
um and what he was trying to instill in me. But yeah, I literally had noticed difference in the way that I carried myself and the way that I
Yeah, it's
felt
insane.
ready for when my son would wake up,
Yeah.
or just like ready for the day.
It's amazing that, I've been brainstorming this whole thing. Catholics are really big on making a holy hour once a week, which is when you would go to an adoration chapel, sit in front of Jesus in the Eucharist, in the tabernacle, and just sit with Jesus.
Mhm.
And I think that's a beautiful and a wonderful thing, but I think as a mother, that's a really hard thing to find a whole hour once a week. But I've really been brainstorming this idea of like a holy hour daily for moms,
Mm. Yeah.
and but part of that being get up and brush your teeth and brush your hair and feel beautiful
Mhm.
just because God wills you to exist. And there's some women who really have reached out to me and said, like, well, I gave up makeup because was feeding my vanity. And I said, well, that might be your
Yeah,
vice.
for you.
Yeah. And I was like, I have really low self-esteem. And so my vice was really the laziness, was just,
Mm.
I mean, even my Instagram handle, I started my blog and everything with this mentality that I don't even hold into anymore. I've worked the messaging behind it
Mhm.
to be more in line with how I think now. But really, I started Holy Hot Mess Mom because it was like, well, I'm a hot mess. What else are we going to do?
Mm.
And now the message is, even though life is messy, you can find holiness,
Right.
not sit and rest in that messiness and using it as an excuse. Because do I think that there's a season for leggings? Like, I had 4 kids in 4 years.
Yes.
Yes, you
There's
know
a
what I mean?
time. Yes.
But there is a time, and it's not bad, but my twins, which are my youngest, are 5 years old now, and I was like, how long am I going to use the crutch of having kids
Mm.
to allow my self-esteem to go down? Honestly, like, it affects everything. It affects my physical relationship with my husband if I feel like crap all the time. And so it's been really nice to get up and get ready. And so I'm in my brain, I'm thinking this idea of like this motherhood holy hour where maybe you wake up an hour before the kids and it's not a full hour of prayer.
Right.
Maybe it's worship music in your ears as you do your makeup for 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then, saying a prayer as you straighten your hair or you pin it back nicely, you know, and
Mm.
then sitting with your coffee for 5 minutes and just gratitude journaling. Like, is there a way that as moms we can build this holy hour because Christ lives within us, like the Holy Spirit lives within us? You can have a holy hour with the temple, the tabernacle that is your
Yeah.
body. And so that's been something that's been really big to me, especially on my heart because we're moving. It's like we have this wonderful chapel that's 12 minutes away from our house,
Mhm.
and I can go if I want to and spend a quiet, perfect hour with Jesus. But that's not the reality for most
Yeah.
people. And so, it's just interesting that, like, how old is your son?
He'll be 2 tomorrow.
Yeah. Oh, happy birthday. Yeah, it's hard because, there's kind of this mommy culture of like
Mhm.
wine to get through the day, messy
Yes.
bun, in the leggings.
Yes.
And like some people look so cute in leggings. I am not that person. I don't look, you
Yeah.
know, I'm just in like frumpy clothes and I feel like crap about
Mhm.
myself. And I think that reflects even for my kids, I've been trying to like make an effort to like, okay, girls, let's make sure that like our hair is done. I'm not curling my daughter's hair,
Mm.
but like there were many a days
Yeah.
we would leave the house and like no hair was brushed. So
Right.
just kind of instilling that like, you know, you are beautiful and God calls us to take care of our temple. And I think obviously obsessiveness over vanity or makeup or trying to recreate a face or anything. I think that's very different. But I think throwing on some mascara and a little bit of lip gloss to feel like you're alive, like I think that's good for us. So
And it's pushing you out of this comfort zone where you're not even, I wouldn't even say laziness, because like we said, like maybe laziness is not everybody's vice, but it may be this level
yeah.
of the Lord is calling you out of what's comfortable. So it may just be,
Hmm.
it may not be you stepping out of leggings, but it may be having breakfast in a meal that's going to nourish your body and not donuts in your Starbucks on the way to work.
I mean, there's so many little changes, and I think that's where just like individual prayer comes in, and that open-ended prayer of like, God, I'm not going to ask questions. What are things you're calling me to detach from? And
Right.
I don't know if it was you, maybe it was you that I was talking to that about I feel I love CrossFit. I've been doing CrossFit for 10 years now, but I took 3 years
Hmm.
off when we lived in New York and I had a million babies in those 3 years. But I've been feeling this weird pull, like God's calling me to detach from CrossFit. And again, that's not saying CrossFit is
Mm.
bad. But I think if I do struggle with any sort of vanity, it's weight room vanity because I am very strong.
Mm.
And I like to be the heaviest lifter. I like to be the most technical. And so I think there's vanity that comes with that. And so if I'm calling on God to bring me humility, and now he's calling me out of my home country where I don't speak the language in Spain.
Yeah.
And I really have been kind of pondering, okay, God, is this the thing you're calling me to detach from, to work on another area of me that you're trying to call me higher? And that doesn't mean that fitness needs to go out the window. I think that's one thing I really have to figure out is fitness does not equal CrossFit. And a lot of times in my life, that's the only way that it's equaled fitness.
Right.
If I'm not doing
Right.
CrossFit, I am
It doesn't count.
completely, yeah. And so just that, how can I in a holy way move my body just because I'm blessed with this body? And
Hmm.
and so it's very interesting because so many people get very highly offended when you start talking about you giving up things. But I think more the message should be like, let's pause and allow God to like open up what in your heart you really need to work on. And it's funny because some things, maybe God is saying that the sugar,
Hmm.
but maybe the sugar is because you're using sugar as a coping mechanism instead of turning to God.
Yeah.
you know Maybe God's calling you to give up yelling because you're reacting to your surroundings instead of responding to them in a biblical way. And those are all things that takes a lot of personal discernment, and that doesn't come without prayer.
Yeah. You're totally right. You mentioned earlier a little bit about how this initial shift changed your relationship with your husband and like kind of
Yeah.
catapulted you in this area of biblical femininity. I would love to just hear, based on what you've learned, like not a textbook, but like workplace definition.
So I think biblical femininity and femininity are two very different things, just from what I'm learning. Obviously, femininity would be outward appearance. I mean, we have men just taking on femininity all they want right now. Um, but so I don't think biblical femininity means
Yeah.
heels and dresses and long hair and makeup and talking in a high voice and thinking bugs are icky. Like that's not what the Bible's talking about. Biblical femininity is a woman who cherishes and knows her role under the submission of her husband. um if she's in a Christian marriage, then your role is submissive to your husband. And our culture tells us that submission is bad. Subservientism is bad. Just being someone's subservient and
Right.
blindly doing whatever they say is clearly not what we want here. Um, that God allows for us to disobey authority figures if they're trying to get us to sin.
Right.
So that's the blanket there, first of all, is if your husband is asking you to be obedient to something that is sin, you do not need to be obedient to that. But that again goes back to, how do you know what is sin and what is not? If you are not deeply in prayer, in relationship with God, then you can't discern those things. Then our own selfish nature comes in and starts saying, well, if he doesn't treat me like
Right.
XYZ, then I don't need to be submissive to him. And I just realized, man, the whole point is that he is under the mission of God and I am under his mission. And the whole mission of all of it is that our whole domestic church, our little family, gets to heaven. And even if my husband doesn't do that role perfectly, I am still called to fulfill my role. And in doing that, will reinforce his ability in his headship and doing his role. And I just kept going through this weird circle of like, wow, am I even allowing him to lead? And I started realizing it's insane, because really what it feels like to me is the power really relies in the people who are submissive. Because if they don't allow the headship of the people ahead of them, it's the same with my husband. If he doesn't allow God to control and guide his life and his headship, then God is not going to, because God's a gentleman. And God's going to step back and say, you don't want me to do this, because he
Mm.
gave us free will to choose him or to not choose him. And it's the same thing with us. If we don't allow our husbands to lead, then they won't. And I think we've got this whole culture of these very masculine women. And I say that in because I am a recovering masculine woman, like that I want to be as strong as the guy next to me at the gym. Um, you know,
Mhm.
wear the pants and break the glass ceiling and all this kind of stuff. And just realizing, wow, in our culture, we praise women for being submissive to employers, and then bash women who are submissive to the husbands who are at home, and literally their mission is to love and guide you to heaven. And so I really just wrestled with that a lot, and asked my husband,
Yeah.
hey, what are ways that I can maybe be more submissive? And I watched, honestly, a lot of YouTube videos on a lot of different perspectives, of women, Jewish women, Muslim women, all just kind of this very submissive. Okay, what are these different
Mhm.
early biblical points of view, but now these, post Jesus Christian points of view? And one of them, a few of the things that stood out to me was little things like family prayer. I I now just sit back, and I don't even think I've told my husband this, but I try to sit back and glance at
Mm.
him like, when you're ready to lead the prayer, and he, in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, instead of me barking the orders at everybody. Um, Simple little things like my husband gets his food at the table before me and the
Yeah.
children. And just a little thing that I've honestly like never spoken it out loud to my husband, but just in my heart, being like, I'm going to serve others first before I serve my spot. I'm going to serve my husband, who goes out of the home and works and does
Right.
a very hard job. And I do a very hard job within the home. Um, and really trying to make sure that his stress at work was able to be left at work, because he wasn't coming home to stress. And it's funny because he, in one of the aspects, I started defaulting to him. If somebody asked me to commit to something, normally I would just say yes, because I'm a people pleaser, and I'd throw it on the calendar, and then eventually I'd get overwhelmed, and then everything's chaos. And one of my perfect examples is one of the coaches for one of my kids for their little fitness classes at the gym. She was moving to Austin, and one of the other coaches said, "Can your kids make like little homemade cards?"
Mhm.
And I said, "Yes, I'll bring cupcakes too." I just jumped in with the cupcakes. And so Monday morning, I'm spending all morning making these homemade cupcakes and chaos, and we didn't get homeschool done because I'm trying to make these cupcakes, and I was just like, who am I trying to please, you know? And I realized if I would have just stopped for a second and just said, let me ask my husband, that would have given me enough breathing room to just stop and be like, is this something I should be taking on? And so I've been defaulting to that.
Mm-hmm.
That's my number one response. If somebody says, hey, can you watch my kid? Let me ask my husband. And my husband told me a couple weeks into me doing this, he said, hey, when you ask me that, I feel like you're letting me protect you. And it wasn't like, because I'm a very independent person, and as a military spouse, like they leave town and you got to like handle it.
Wow.
And so that's kind of been an adjustment because he was out of town for a little bit and I had to handle it. I had to be the man and the woman, but then he came back and I had to be like, okay, I have to let go of the reins again. And but it was really interesting that he said that. He's like, I feel more protective of you. And it was like, because I'm allowing him to be protective of me, he's being more protective. And this dynamic of this like gentler speak with each other started coming. Like out of submission to him, I was speaking gentler, and out of care and protection of me, he was speaking gentler to me. And I was just like, this dynamic has blessed us greatly. And we have never been we don't yell at each other, but like I'll give an attitude, I'll be a little snappy, and just really allowing myself to be led has been so freeing, especially for a control freak too, because it takes a lot of the pressure off of me. So yeah, just random little things. I let him drive now.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been like, it's my minivan. I drive. You sit in the passenger seat, but now it's like I let him drive, and it's made me have to get rid of some control issues I have. But he also was like, I feel like I get to protect you and the kids because I'm the one driving, and just little things that we just don't realize. Maybe there's little ways that we're chipping away
Mm.
at that leadership role because we're not allowing it. So yeah, just really diving into that, and I've been trying to share a little bit of that on Instagram, but uh my life is like move and and then like sell most of our belongings, and then like sometimes biblical submission and femininity, and then it's like, oh, and my minivan's broken. So I'm trying.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I actually had a similar conversation with a woman who is an author for a devotional specifically for overwhelmed moms. Was a gift from a friend in a postpartum season. I needed to hear it.
Yeah.
But she was just so gracious in reminding me that, and I think this is applicable in a military community and environment, that your husband should not be hearing the kindest words outside of your home.
Yes.
And I was like,
Yeah.
because the military world is, people can read your identity based on your uniform. It's all about accolades. It's, how you can perform,
Mm-hmm.
very legalistic in a way,
Yeah.
and very black and white in terms of like seeing everybody's accomplishments and failures quite literally on their face every day.
Yeah.
So it's just like so humbling to hear her remind me of like, your husband should not hear the best things about himself from other people. Your husband should hear the best things about himself from you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even learning, even too, that like in the past, how I've handled maybe marital issues or whatever, because every marriage is going to go through them, and how I reached out to friends that were in the same season, or reached out to many other friends and I realize now, out of a maybe victim mindset or wanting empathy, or like, yeah, he was wrong and you're right, or whatever it was. And I just realized,
Mm,
he he and I are one body. And like, am I building him up in the eyes of other people? Is he getting the best of me in our home? Is he getting the best of me? And I've been very, very against women who bash their husbands. I think I've only ever been really in the military life, but I feel like a lot of times when wives get together, they just complain about their husbands. And that's always been something that I'm like, kind of red flag, don't want to be your friend. Like my husband is,
Yeah, stay off the Facebook pages.
yeah, like my husband's my best friend. Doesn't mean that it's perfection, but he's my best friend. But when you do have arguments or disagreements or something, maybe watching who I say what to. Maybe going to even my own family or my sisters is not the wise counsel that should be sought, because
Mhm.
because you and your husband are a team, and at least in my point of view, like there's no breaking that up. And and so to go to people who are going to be biased and talk about whatever it is,
Yeah.
they're going to carry that bias with them for the rest of your marriage. And so, like, when are we seeking biblical wise counsel from women who are maybe within our church community but aren't like close in our marriage, or just things like that? And I don't know, I feel like God's really pulling me and growing me in these areas, that like
Yeah.
the priority of nurturing my marriage first before any other relationship. Well, God first, then myself, and then my marriage. Because at the end of the day, like that's
Mm.
what I'm going to have after my kids leave, is my marriage with my husband. And so, you know, no organization is going to run well with two heads of it competing for the same roles at the same time.
Right.
No country has two presidents that functions properly. And so, leaning into that and just learning how I can fulfill my roles and allow him to fulfill his roles, and then honor and cherish
Mhm. Yeah.
him in my speech and the way that I talk to him and about him, and all those things. So yeah, that's really interesting, especially in the military. They get awards for literally everything. They get an award for like making sure that they get to work on time. And
Yes.
so, but it's so true.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting too because as our personal relationship with the Lord our marriage is supposed to emulate our personal relationship for the Lord. So
Yeah.
like if I am not physically, emotionally, spiritually like carving out that space for my husband to lead as he leads after the Lord, then like how do I expect myself to be led by the Lord either? And I
Yeah.
think you hit the nail on the head earlier talking about like in our culture it's just hypersensitive to individuality and being the best you can be, boss mom, hustle culture,
Mhm.
all of those things, when in reality I'm only hurting myself if I'm not creating this space for my husband to walk in what God has called him and quite literally created him to be, because I do
Yeah.
believe that the Lord has created male and female with intention,
Yeah.
with different roles. Um, so how has this kind of shaped your, I guess, perspective of surrender, knowing that you're now learning actual surrender with your husband?
I think that the biggest thing I'm taking away from it is in moments when I find it hard to surrender to human, I need to still surrender to God through that human, and through the role God has given to that human. And that has even trickled down into my parenting, to my children, to let there's actually been actual moments where I've said that the importance of you obeying right now is because if I allow you to trample over my authority, you will have no respect for the authority of the Lord when you leave my home. And and that, to me, I don't.
Mm,
If you would have asked me 10 years ago the aspirations I would have had for my kids, it would have been great career and doctors and whatever. And literally my only aspiration right now is that they get to heaven. I don't care if they live in a cardboard box. I would hope that, the Lord will provide and that they will make
mhm,
great choices. But even if they don't, like I want heaven for them. And the reality is like there's a lot of times where God chooses us or God asks us to obey because he knows what's good for us, even if it doesn't feel good for us. And that's where that surrender has to come in. And there's times where you can learn that through your husband too. Maybe I really want to start a business making floral decorations. I don't know, I'm making that up. I don't know how to make floral arrangements,
Yeah.
and let's say you turn to your husband and you surrender that and you say, "Okay, I'm going to surrender this to you and the decision is on you. I'm going to lay down the aspects of it and you decide." And a lot of peace comes with that surrender because it's almost like it is the reflection of the heavenly Father where you can say, "Okay, when you make this decision, I get to rest in the fact that this is the right decision no matter what happens." Because this decision has come through
Mm,
somebody who is
right.
looking out for nothing but my best interest because you are my spouse. And we're trying to we are renting our home when we go to Spain, and we had all these applicants, and I was falling in love with families. I was talking to the wives on the phone, and they were super cute and they had cute kids, and I was so emotional.
Yeah.
My husband actually said, like, this is a big difference between men and women, that men are much more rational. Um, and we don't use emotion as much. And he said, and it doesn't mean that
Hmm.
your emotions are bad. He said, I think it's beautiful. And he said, and you are much more wise than I am in a lot of different aspects. Like, I am a stupid, ridiculous, like, researcher, and so my husband said it has nothing to do with your intellect. And he said, but when you present me with information and then just surrender, like, okay, you make that decision, one, it takes so much pressure off me trying to be the man and the woman, and then also allows him to lead, and then allows me to have peace in whatever decision is made.
Mm,
Whatever comes of that, I surrendered that decision to the head of the family. And so when it came to these renters, I really wanted this one family. They were cute and they were adorable, but the numbers just didn't add up. Like, there was another family whose numbers made more sense, that was a little more stable.
okay.
And I was kind of like, okay, like, this is the family I like, and I like them because they're cute. And the wife is like, whatever. And my husband came back and he was like, hey, I chose the other family. And I was like,
Yeah.
I understand why you did. Like, I get it. Like, I was letting emotions and stuff. And I had even told the families, I said, my husband's going to be making this decision because I'm defaulting to him. And it's been amazing because in surrendering to that, this family
Hmm.
decided to sign a 3-year lease. This family decided to buy our washer and dryer, so now we don't have to do that. Yeah, I mean, like, it's all lined up perfectly. And it's not to say that, like, surrendering
Wow.
to your husband makes everything perfect, but it's that reassurance to me that, like, okay, yes, this is the right thing to do, to allow him to be the head of the family, because you're not meant to hold every role. And we as women are like, oh, we're expected to do everything. And I'm like, but are we trying to do the men things and the women things?
Right.
Because there's been a lot of I do a lot, and I'm doing a lot for this move. But I will tell you, I feel less overwhelmed than I felt a year ago today, because I'm not trying to be the man and the woman of the family.
Wow.
And so that's just been really, really freeing, just for things. We got the minivan fixed today, and there were some decisions to make on it. We had an intellectual conversation. We crunched the numbers, and ultimately it was up to him. He went, he paid that bill. I don't need to stress over the money that was spent, because
Mm,
the head of the family, who makes the majority of the income for the family, made the decision, and I get to rest and surrender to that decision, instead of me making a decision and then being like, oh, was that too much money? Should I have gone with another? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's just little things like that you just don't realize are
yeah.
decision fatigue and mental load and burnout that we really don't need to be carrying.
Yeah.
And then we look at our husbands, this culture of, like, my husband, oh, my husband doesn't do anything. It's like, do you let him? Because if you don't let him, then, like, we really can't sit back and complain about the fact that this, like,
Mm,
lazy husband culture or whatever, all they do is drink beer and watch football. It's like, well, do you let him lead in the family? Do you let him do? And so that's just something I'm really exploring, because it's given me so much freedom and
yeah.
peace, honestly, to not have to carry the male and female weight of the entire family that I
Yeah.
was, like, willingly stealing off of his shoulders.
Mm. Yeah, and a lot of that I've noticed in my own heart is not even a lack of trust in my husband. Maybe it is. You know, there's a vulnerable aspect of me, but maybe it is lack of trust
Yeah.
in my husband.
Yeah.
But I think it's pride. And it's ultimately like, well, if I can do it, then I'm superior in our marriage. And that manifests from,
Yeah.
you know, trauma that I had with my parents growing up. That, you know, that manifests in control or other vices that
Mm-hmm.
keep me feeling comfortable out of what the Lord has called me. I think this is just like a really big topic, and I know that we can't speak to everyone's experiences, but I would just love to hear what your encouragement would be
Mm-hmm.
to the woman that is maybe wanting to pursue this, but not, her marriage may not be in the place that like
Yeah.
is equally yoked or even in a place to have this conversation yet. What encouragement would you give, I think, for women that are like, this would be great?
So I will say, I think that we need to trust God and trust the process. And, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
deep personal things that like I'm not going to go into just from discretion, but have come out of this. A lot of spiritual deepening on my husband's point, like his life. Um, and they didn't come out of me controlling that into him. They came out of me submitting. And
Mm.
I think that the most important thing you can do as a wife um, is to number one, have actual conversations with Jesus. Like Jesus is your soulmate, your husband is not. And the world doesn't want to say that. The world wants to tell you that either men are the devil
Yeah.
or you need to find your soulmate to fix you. And that is a lie. Your soulmate is Jesus. And when you put God in a box and humans on a pedestal, the human will let you down.
Right.
And then you are keeping God in a box and God cannot work in your life.
Mm-hmm.
The reverse needs to be done. God needs to be on the pedestal and the humans need to be allowed to be in the box, because when we say that our husband is our soulmate, we expect them not to fail and we expect them to be perfect. But then on the flip of that, we want them to give us grace when we fail.
Mm.
It's it's an unfair
Yeah.
like point of view. So first and foremost is you
Mm-hmm.
have to have a conversation with Jesus. And one thing that really transformed my personal relationship with Jesus was journaling. Um, and I'm not one to journal. I honestly journal and I can't even read it after I write it. Or
Mm-hmm.
talking out loud to him. In our day and age, nobody knows if you're on your AirPods or if you're like a schizophrenic. Nobody knows the difference. So it's okay. Just talk to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in your car, if you're ever in your car by yourself, or if you're in the kitchen by yourself, or weeding the garden, talk out loud and talk to Jesus as if he's standing right next to you, and tell him like, I want my husband to be the leader of the family. I need you to help humble me so that I can know in which ways I, for the things I can control about myself, can allow him that space to grow and mature or seek after your heart, because us controlling them into that and parenting and into a relationship with God is like not going to happen. And I remember years and years and years ago, a priest told me, the whole, you convert nobody, the Holy Spirit does.
Yeah.
And and so he just kept being like, you need to work on yourself. Like if you work on yourself, that is what is like, he kept saying, if you polish the diamond that is your own self, if you clean that diamond off and you polish it, then Christ's light radiates off of you. And
Mm.
you are not magnified, the light is.
Wow.
But if your diamond is all messy, then you're not doing God a service. No matter how much you go shove your diamond in people's faces, they don't want to see it if it's not reflecting the light of Christ. And so that was my big thing, is like being able to just stop, and in times of frustration, in times of struggling with surrender, struggling of knowing, what is my place,
Mm-hmm.
to actually physically have a conversation with Jesus. And then there's going to be softening, a lot of softening that happens on your heart. And I think we need to realize that like we are one body. We are one flesh with our spouses. And so when we do soul work, it affects them as well. And I think we try to
That's true.
wishy-wash that, but like you are one flesh with your spouse. And when you come together as a couple, if you know what I'm saying, there's a lot of graces that come with that. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, even praying within your own self before and after the marital act, just things like, Lord,
Yeah.
soften his heart, soften my heart. What things can you expose in me that, he'll see me working on? I think that's the best encouragement I can give. And then if you feel something in your heart where maybe you're a little offended by this biblical femininity and submission talk or whatever,
Hmm.
maybe you're not, maybe you're intrigued, go open your Bible, open it up to Ephesians 5, open it up to Proverbs 31, and just sit with it. Like,
Yeah.
don't read through it fast. Just sit with it and just let that stuff sit, those
Yeah.
words seep into your soul and be like, what are you teaching me? And maybe my kids don't submit to my authority because I don't submit to my husband's authority. Things like that. And so yeah, I would say just deepen your
Yeah.
prayer and your relationship with Christ. That will flow into your relationship with your spouse, especially if you're in the word.
Yeah. Absolutely. Wow. Heather, this was such an easy and just like beautiful conversation. I would love to
Oh,
share where our community can connect with you. I know you'll be in flux for a little bit as you enjoy your cross country adventure.
just a whole bunch of chaos. Yeah, so I really only hang out on Instagram.
Yeah.
Years ago, I tried to like do all the things, and I just like Instagram more. I've made like actual friends on it. It's just I don't know. It's more my like in my 30s vibe. So yeah, I'm on Instagram at Holy Hot Mess Mom, and I've got a blog which is holyhotmess.net. That's I update it when I can. And then my podcast is Holy Hot Mess, and I'm on like a season 3, and we've got like 85 or 86 episodes out. So like
Hmm.
a good chunk of stuff to like, I mean, but this has been going on since 2018, so it's been a little sporadic. But yeah, if you just look up Holy Hot Mess, I have,
Mm,
I mean, just a lot like this, just casual conversations with other ladies.
right.
Because I like podcasts where I feel like I'm sitting in on a conversation, not like a journalistic necessarily aspect. So yeah, just conversations over there.
Hmm.
And yeah, if you want to keep up with our
Yeah.
Spain adventures, I know it's going to be wild. I also know it's going to be
Hmm.
lonely,
Right.
and uh crazy, and we have to live in an Airbnb for like 3 months, and so that's going to be kind of nuts. But I mean, I'm welcoming the adventure. I think it'll be super fun. So yeah.
I'm really excited for you guys, and I'll definitely link all of that. So, for our closing question, we finished with all of our guests.
Yeah.
So, if you could provide any wisdom for your younger self or for our community that is listening, what would you share?
Um, Honestly, what just came to my heart is worry about yourself. And like I just mean that like I spent so much of my life trying to control everything outside of me,
Yeah.
and it's just led to a lot of heartache. Like
Yeah.
you can't control when friendships fizzle, you can't control
Hmm.
um how people react or respond to you. You can control your heart and your intentions and your actions. So if you worry about yourself in the aspect of like your path to holiness and how you can just love others, uh, that makes life a lot easier. If the person at the grocery store that's being super snippy at you, just love them.
Mm,
I think, and love them in the way that you're showing Christ to them, not loving them just making them feel good. Um, and so worrying about yourself, just
right.
learn how to pray, work on your relationship with Christ, because all beautiful things flow from that. And I think I spent,
Hmm.
at least 26 years of my life just trying to control every aspect of my life instead of allowing the Lord to lead it. So, um, yeah, I'm 9 years into really this faith journey, and it's kind of crazy how far, how far, how far things have come. And I just wish for a younger person, I could just say, hey, Your relationship with the Lord is going to transform every aspect of your life. And so if you can focus on that instead of focus on career and you know what I mean? Like all those things will come. Everything else will be fine. And there's so much contentment and peace when you're resting in the Lord instead of trying to control every aspect. Because when you try to control it and something doesn't go right,
Yep.
that's when everything spirals.
Yeah. My dad is new to this faith journey, and one of the favorite things that I love hearing him say now, especially in those like road rage incidences or people unkind and passing, is I can give you
Yeah.
nothing but my patience and grace.
Yeah.
So, with that, this is such an easy conversation and I love the topic.
Oh, good.
So, I will definitely link all of your things and stay up to date with y'all's move. We're not moving till later this year, but that's a future Reina problem.
Yeah, exactly. So it's funny. People have been asking me, like, how do you do this? How do you get a cell phone in Spain? And I'm like, I don't know. That is future me problems. And I am not figuring that out.
Of course. So, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah,
And I'm just so thankful for this conversation.
absolutely. I'm so glad to be here.
And we will catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you for listening, friend. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you don't want to miss any wisdom or encouragement, be sure to subscribe to the show. And don't forget to rate and review. Your feedback means so much and helps our community grow. If you're looking for more wellness wisdom and free resources, head over to livingwiselywell.com or get connected with me on Instagram at wiselywell. And if you're looking for a break from the hurried health lifestyle, check out my Return to Rest resource for tangible ways to slow down and finally find rest.